Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker. Every day, countless families face the tragic news of a loss of a child. Whether through miscarriage, stillbirth, a disease, or an accident, losing a child is one of the most gut-wrenching losses a family can experience. How do you begin to move forward? Our next guest says you would think that somehow after years of hearing of tragic stories in the news, viewing shocking stories in social media, seeing countless people die in movies, and reading terrifying stories of people's peril in the history of mankind, you would at least be a little prepared to deal with death. But nothing can prepare a parent for the death of their precious child. All those stories were not your story. Co-author Dr. Gary Chapman says the deep sense of loss does not evaporate with the passing of time. The journey can be extremely lonely, especially when the couple has little or no support from others. Life must go on, but the physical and emotional pain makes it difficult to muster the energy to keep walking. In this new work, they walk couples through the grieving process, encouraging them in their marriage during this complex experience and guiding them through a healthy way to grieve. They discuss the 5 love languages and how to use them with one another and with other family members as they support each other and begin to rebuild their lives. Candy McVicker is an author, inspirational speaker, and devoted advocate for families who are grieving a baby or child. After experiencing the stillbirth of her daughter Grace, she founded and became executive director of Missing Grace Foundation, whose mission is to provide support, resources, and education for families and professional care providers when there's a loss of a baby, infertility, or adoption challenges. Candy also serves in ministry alongside her husband in Hawaii with their 2 daughters. Here to discuss her book, Holding On to Love After You've Lost a Baby, co-authored with Dr. Gary Chapman, is Candy McVicker. Candy, welcome to Revealing the Truth.
Hi, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to join you. I'm excited to be able to bring this topic out there to your viewing audience, and very thankful for the opportunity.
Well, we're especially thankful because we're broadcast in 110 nations and you're live all across the world right now, prime time in the Middle East and all throughout Asia and Africa. And then we replay this so that every time zone will be able to view this in prime time. So this will be seen 7 more times today, and then it goes into our archives. This is something that we heard Michael W. Smith. We have Rick and Sherry Burgess here in Birmingham, who both lost their 2-year-old children to accidents. And in both their eulogies, were able to praise God and hold on to that. And I believe that their story, like yours, is a testimony to holding on, literally taking your scared hand and putting it in his scarred hand and not letting go and not allowing it to divide you and your husband, which is what this is about, is how to navigate the marriage in the most extreme crisis of all. Mm-hmm. And the one there is not an answer to. I think that's the hardest part, is in almost every other type of situation, we can usually go to Scripture and find an answer. And in this particular case, in the loss of a child, we only find a question mark. And that makes it hard to offer support externally, pastorally, and then when it's all said and done, it's just you and your husband left to take the next step in life together. And it's divided many more families than it's united. And that's why we're so thankful that this resource is here to help families navigate how this can be a binding and a solidifying of this love that brought this marriage to the point of having a child, and saving the marriage so that it's not a compounding of death experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so thank you for using yourself and your husband as the study guide for this, using and applying Dr. Gary Chapman's 5 love languages. So it's a very deep personal story. And what I'd like to do is give you an opportunity to kind of take us to the genesis of your experience and how your experience brought you together with Dr. Gary Chapman.
Well, we were interested to have a large family. And so before marriage, you discuss how many kids do you want to have, and we wanted at least 4 and more. And so when we tried to have give it our first try, we were very thankful that things went well with us, because we knew infertility in this world is very common now, and it can be more difficult to conceive. And when we got pregnant with Grace, it was a very difficult pregnancy. And we had a couple scares throughout that, and then at 30 weeks I began to have decreased fetal movement, and it was alarming. And so I went into the clinic 7 times to be exact, and asked for monitoring. I asked for an ultrasound, but they told me it wasn't necessary. And I had Doppler checks, which basically just checks for a heartbeat, a fetal tone. And each time they could eventually find a heartbeat, but on the 7th visit, they weren't finding that. They sent me to the ultrasound appointment that I'd been asking for, and that was the day life changed dramatically for us. And in a room that kind of felt like a concentration camp, it just was a very scary moment in time, because nobody would talk. Everybody was silent. They wouldn't answer the questions. They wouldn't acknowledge us. It was very odd. And they put on the Doppler for the ultrasound, and the radiologist came in the room and said, "As you can see, there is no heartbeat. It is dead." And she went to turn around and leave the room. And I said, "What are you talking about? This is my baby. It's not it. Like, I don't understand what you're saying." And she said, "There's no more heartbeat. It's dead. You need to go to the hospital and deliver it now." And, our world came crashing in at that moment. We were just in shock, and we had to go get induced at the hospital. And we went through 24 hours of labor, and it was a very difficult labor, and had a complication at the very end, right before delivery, that I briefly died. And I had been complaining. I felt like my heart felt like it had fluid on it, and I couldn't breathe. I couldn't catch my breath. And they just said, "Well, you're having a hard labor. This is normal." Well, I was preeclamptic, and my body and organs, things were shutting down. I wasn't doing well at all. And the Lord, that's a whole nother story, but I had an experience with the Lord as I died, and I had the opportunity to be back, and I chose to be with my husband, and I delivered a beautiful, perfect little girl. There was nothing wrong with her physically, except there was a cord issue that cut off oxygen and nutrients. And that was actually, it's all spoken about in the book, but it was diagnosed, the cord issue actually, it was found at 20 weeks. But I'm learning it's more common than we would like to admit, that they did not tell me that. They had the information but did not share that with us. And so she had what's called a velamentous cord, which means the umbilical cord attaches to the outer membrane of the placenta. And it's a very dangerous type of connection, because it compromises throughout the pregnancy. And these babies don't very often make it unless they're delivered by cesarean and early. And so she gave us plenty of warning signs that she needed delivery by her decreased fetal movement. And if she had been delivered earlier, just by a few days, we would have her today. And so we ended up reaching out to many different groups of people trying to get help and support, and the emails just never were replied to, and people didn't get back to us. It was very strange. And there was one man who was recommended to me, Dr. Collins, and on my online support group, there was a group of women that said he'd been very helpful for them in answering questions and navigating what to do after their stillbirths. And I called him, and he gave me 45 minutes of phone time that was incredible. And he just kept repeating, it's not your fault. You trusted us as doctors. You trusted doctors to do the right thing. And he said, but you can honor her. You can do something. You can give a legacy for her life by trying to prevent loss for others and helping others. And although I didn't set out to start an organization or to do what we ended up doing, it was all very prompted by the Lord, and I felt like this was our redemptive part of the story and our beauty for ashes, and that I would learn as I go. He qualified me as we went along, right? I didn't sign up to be the executive director of an organization that's national, but it happened very quickly. And so within short timing, we were putting on conferences and running support groups and providing support in hospitals for newly bereaved parents who were delivering a miscarriage, a stillborn, a neonatal loss, an accidental death in the first years of life. And I served in the hospital for 10 years. I do professional photography and videography, and my husband edits, and I would go in there and just be with them through the whole labor as an advocate, and just love them through the process, pray over them, and just be there to support them in their most difficult journey, but also help them create healing memories. Because when we lost Grace, we didn't have anyone to walk us through that, and it was so terrifying, and we didn't hold her hardly at all. We were so afraid. They start changing quickly when they're stillborn, and I just didn't have someone to say these things are normal and it's okay to want to love her and hold her, and you're not going to hurt any less. It's still going to hurt whether you hold her or don't hold her. Like the emotions are still there. And so we had tons of regrets. So our goal was to limit the regret as much as possible, to give parents every opportunity to do the things they didn't know they have the right to do. And so that's kind of been our journey, and thousands of people are served through our foundation, and we're very grateful for that opportunity, and we've done it as a family. Our whole family has always been involved, and we did have subsequent children, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later. But as far as how it came to pass that Dr. Chapman and us connected, we really had difficulty in our marriage shortly after. We have a great marriage, we're best friends, but all of a sudden in the loss, we just had no buffer left. There was just shortness and curtness, and we weren't very gentle with our words. We would get irritated very easily with each other. We just had a fence between each other. And he was really doing something that now I know is common, but he was just trying to be a good provider and take care of me and do his best to keep life in order and above water, and go to work and do his things around the home. But what he wasn't doing was he wasn't communicating with me about my emotions, his emotions. He wasn't sharing if he was hurting or missing her. And I was really struggling with, are we on the same page even? Like, did you even care? Was she just a blip on the screen? Like, did she matter to you? And so as we had these tough conversations, he of course was like, yeah, of course I love her, but when's a good time for me to be down? You're already sad and depressed. When can I have my time? Because I'm afraid the ship sinks if I start to really show my emotions. So what happened, we had a good blowout we needed, just that hard conversation. But the ultimate bottom line is we're committed for life. This is a forever thing, our marriage, and we love each other, and we're going to work this out, and we're going to figure out how to do grief. How do we navigate grief as a Christian couple? And we decided, let's really invest in our marriage and work on us, and always put deposits into the bank of our marriage. And so we started going to marriage conferences every year, and we would attend conferences. And at one of those conferences, that's where Dr. Chapman was a speaker. And the Lord just divinely set up an appointment. Literally, I went, and the Lord shared to just a word of knowledge to go speak to him. And it was just a beautiful situation, because I said, well, Lord, he's going to have a line of people. There's no way I'll be able to talk to him. There's thousands of people, and I said, if he has neither anyone on his left or right, and he's sitting without someone right beside him, I'll sit down and talk to him. And he had no one on his left or right. And I was like, oh gosh, I got to keep my word and talk to him. And I was so nervous, not knowing quite what to say. And I shared, we run an organization and we had a loss. And I said, your book was paramount for us when I missed that piece. But when we went on our online support group, I kept seeing all these people talking about the love languages. I didn't know about it. And when I shared about our marriage struggles, some of the women said, you should really get the love language book, and it will just be an added, tool in your marriage toolbox. And it's important to just understand each other's love language. And so we began to implement it, and it was a game changer for us. It was really powerful. And so we began to implement that in our support groups. And all these young couples who were struggling in their marriage, we would get them set up taking the quiz and get them understanding, and then we would give them a challenge before the next support group meeting to work on an issue in their marriage applying the love languages. And so for many, many years, we had seen how successful it was to apply the love languages in our support groups. And I was like, wow, there really is something here. Like, this is simple. It's not complicated. Like, our brains hurt from grief. We're so traumatized. We don't need a complicated thing to do. We need something simple and applicable that's going to be able to be used day in and day out. And so, of course, when we saw he had the conference, we were so excited. We're like, oh my gosh, we love Gary Chapman, and let's go to his conference. And so that was a real delight. And so at that conversation, I just said, I would love if you would write a book that's related to this, because it was so impactful for us. And he goes, you know what, I'm going to write that book, and I'm going to write it with you. And I was like, what? Oh my gosh. He said, I've been waiting to write this book. I get asked about this book all the time, but I've never had the co-author that I knew in my spirit was the one to do this with. And he said, and the Lord is really showing me right now that we're doing this together, that this story has to be told, and you're the one to tell it. So it's such an honor. I just was blown away, and I had many people said, you're going to write a book, and you got many books in you. And I was like, oh gosh, I'm not a writer. I love reading, I love books, but not me. And so it was a labor of love. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to write books, and God was showing me that he had this for me, and I just was obedient and walked along as he put the lamp to my feet.
Well, I want to applaud you. Dr. Chapman is incredibly discerning of the books that he's co-authored, and we've interviewed many of his co-authors on various topics, very similar stories to yours, of these encounters and the Lord revealing, yet this is the one that I'm going to partner with. Although I have to say that of all of them, this one is the one that there's nothing you can say. I've been with families, and I can't find the words. There are no words. In the Jewish form of mourning, we believe in just being present. We don't believe in talking. So the bereaved sits there, and you sit with them. And if they feel like talking, they initiate the conversation. But if not, there's not a lot of conversation going on, because they're processing their grief. And grief is very personal. Imagine being in that situation where the spouses aren't talking and they're trying to give each other room to grieve on their own, that is not beneficial. That causes a lot of the rift and the drift to take place, because one believes that it was much more important to me than it was to you. You weren't invested in this, and you don't care. And if you don't care what breaks my heart, then you don't really care about me. And it becomes a wedge that divides, and there's the blame and the recrimination and the doubt and the self-loathing and the I should have listened. When they said that, I should have known what that meant. I should have challenged them about that. I should have read up about that. I should have heard that term and done something. And I can imagine all this going through this very intelligent mind of yours, of all the what ifs and all the should haves and all this, which there's no comfort in any of that. And then there's those that say, well, it must have been God's will. And that's supposed to be comforting to you. Or a spouse saying that to the other spouses, oh, it must have been God's will. This is such a tender topic. Stillborn, just short of 33 weeks. When you and your husband finally made the decision to navigate through this together, what changed?
Well, we naturally love people the way we want to be loved. It's just inherent. We know it feels good for us. We know what we need. And so that's how we love people. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just natural process of understanding this what feels good and this how I like that. And so then I'm going to do that for others. And so what Dr. Chapman discovered with writing the 5 love languages and his counseling of thousands of people is, so many of these marriages and complications in relationships happened with people just loving people the way they wanted to be loved. And he realized there just needed to be just a little shift in how our thinking is about our communication and relational aspect with people. How are we giving love and receiving love? And we misunderstand each other if they don't love us the way we want to be loved. We feel like they must not love us then, which isn't true. They do love us, but they just aren't communicating the way we want to hear it and feel it and see it. And so the love languages is really beautiful in just shifting our mindset about giving and receiving love. And so I learned I was loving my husband in many good ways. He appreciated it. He enjoyed what I did, but I wasn't reaching the deepest part of his heart. I wasn't touching his soul in a way that was consistent and filling up that love tank. And so there was always a little bit missing, and there was like a dissonance there, because he was longing for something but not knowing how to express to me what he was longing. And it would almost seem rude to say to me, you're not loving me well enough, because I was doing I'm very loving to him, serving him and spending time with him and doing all these things, because my love languages are acts of service and quality time. And so I would give and give and give of all of I could in these areas. But these are not his love languages, and he was not feeling like I was giving that to him. And same for me, he was loving me in all these ways that he wanted to be loved, which was to tell me all kinds of wonderful things. He's so verbally affirming and so generous with words, and he means them, and they're deeply important to him, whether he's writing them or he's saying them. And then he's very affectionate in very sweet ways. He'll give me a massage anytime I want. He always comes up and puts his arms around me and holds me and hugs me, and he's just always holding my hand and putting his hand on my knee as we drive. I mean, he's very gentle and loving towards me. But these things were not connecting in an understanding of, oh, that's how you love me, and you're giving me your all through that. And so once we realized this, we were like, oh, I just need to kind of shift my mindset here. I need to give you love the way your heart desires to receive love, and you will do the same for me. And I will not hold offense towards you when sometimes you just naturally veer towards giving love the way you love to be loved. And so as we begin to put into practice, because this is something you learn, this isn't something that happens overnight, you start to go, oh, I could do this, and that would really fill their love tank. That would be nice. And I had to be very intentional about touching him, like in the kitchen. As I walk past, my hand goes across his shoulder. As he's standing there, I just come up and put my hand around beside him, and he's like, oh, it gives me shivers. Like, I just love when you just gently touch me like that. Like, I just hadn't thought about it. Like, I'm like, of course I love you, I want to touch you, but I don't think to be so intentional and so consistent with it. And, my thing would be, your house is perfect and clean, and your food is beautiful on the table, and I gave you my undivided attention, for however long, and I felt like I was doing a really good job as a wife, and he thought he was doing an awesome job as a husband. So what could be wrong? And so a lot of people, the intention is good, the heart is there, they want to do the right thing, they just need a little, paradigm shift in their thinking and a willingness to be moldable and to be allowing the Lord to come into that and really speak to us. Because if our identity in Christ is secure and who we are in him, and who they are to him, these people that we love, our spouse in particular and our children, that you add that with the love languages, and it's so powerful. It's just, this understanding of God would love us the way we want to be loved. That's how he loves us. He knows how to reach the part of our heart that is deep, and he can go there with us. And so he's teaching us, he's showing us how to love well. And so how do you love a stranger that you just meet, but you can pick up on signs and things about their character and how they conduct themselves, and you can actually pick up on their love languages and know how to help them and let them feel safe and secure and loved by putting that into practice with even new people that you meet. And so we've gotten a lot better at it. It's just more natural for us now. So the love tank is very full. So then when there's any kind of difficulties or challenges, that there doesn't need to be a lot of grease to get that wheel going. The wheel, it's already greased, it's already working and smooth. And so the arguments and the challenges are very minimal. Like, they're just like a hiccup. They're like, oh, well, we can work through that because we have so much in that love tank. And our understanding, the other thing is to give someone the benefit of the doubt. Like, so often, I believe there's a spirit of offense in the earth right now that's so strong. And everybody's offended with everyone about everything. Your party, who you associate with, what kind of, denomination or faith stance you have. Everybody's just, they have all these offenses, and nobody gives each other the benefit of the doubt that their intention is good. And so if we can do that too, and just trust that they have a good heart, why would they really intentionally try to hurt me like that? No, maybe there's room for, I've misunderstood or misinterpreted the way that they're saying this or doing this, or it's coming out of their own hurt and pain. It has nothing to do with me. It's because they're having a bad day or they're struggling with something, and we need to get to the root of that. So a lot of this too is giving the benefit of the doubt and giving a lot of grace for the other person's journey.
We're talking with Candy McVicker, who in partnership with Dr. Gary Chapman have authored Holding On to Love After You've Lost a Baby, the 5 Love Languages for Grieving Parents. If couples' love language are different, and you find a place to connect where you can actually speak your partner's love language and fill up their love tank. When it comes to loss and grief, are they different? Are they processed differently? Or are some of the same principles applicable to helping each other navigate grief, as men and women process grief differently? We're going to take a short break, and when we come back on the other side of break, we're going to talk about men and women grieving differently and how these principles can be applied to understanding how your spouse is grieving so that you can implement love languages and understand the love languages in relationship to grief so that you can be there to grieve well together if you can, if there is such a thing as grieving well. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. Shalom. I'm Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, inviting you to join me and my special featured guests twice per month with Rabbi Zev Parat and Carl Gallups, and monthly with Dr. Michael Heiser, Dr. Michael Lake, Dr. Timothy Jennings, Dr. Mark Baker, Dr. Jeffrey Johnson, Drs. Michelle and Mark Sherwood, Dr. Kim Moss, Derek Gilbert, Peter Rosenberger, Brandon Gallups, Steve Fair, Stephen Black, and Sean Tabbitt for in-depth insights into Israel, prophecy, the unseen realm, the brain, spiritual warfare, overcoming shame, mysteries of the Bible, prophetic insights, the sensational and the supernatural, caregiving, addiction recovery, understanding the divided heart, same-sex attraction, and much more. We're proud to feature some of the greatest biblical minds from both Israel and around the United States. Check out our featured guest lineup and 24/7 feed on ignitinganation.com or watch by topic on any device with our free apps. If you can't find what you need, you're just not looking in the right place. Follow us on social media and download our free apps today.
With today's smartphone technology, news, information, sports, and entertainment is widely available and almost unbounded. But what about the information that believers in Yeshua are looking for? Well, now there's an app for that. Igniting a Nation now has apps available for Android and iPhone. With our app, you'll gain access to everything you would in our website, from our featured guests to our live streaming shows. Visit Google Play or the Apple Store and download Igniting a Nation's new app today.
Shalom. I'm Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, inviting you to join me and Israel's #1 rated guide, Edo Canaan, for our annual Israel trip. Our 2022 trip is now open for registration for our 18th trip to Israel. Our trip will take us from Tel Aviv to the Galilee, down to the Dead Sea, and 4 nights in Jerusalem. You will walk where Yeshua walked and watch the Bible turn from black and white to living color. Visit ignitinganation.com/events and download the registration form today. No, it's not too early to take advantage of our payment plan designed to fit any budget. All of our trips sell out, and we want you to experience this life-changing journey. Registration is now open for April 2nd to 13th, 2022, and we promise you, you will never read your Bible the same way again. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heart lines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Candy McVicker, who along with Dr. Gary Chapman have written the book Holding On to Love After You've Lost a Baby, the 5 love languages for grieving parents. Candy, welcome back.
Thank you.
We know that men and women love differently. Sometimes they speak the same in love language, but oftentimes we find they don't. When we apply this to the grief and grieving process, it's kind of the same approach. Men and women process grief differently. So in your exploration of the 5 love languages for grieving parents, how did you find the application of the concept of love languages into the grief equation made it so that you could navigate this together and grieve together well, finding the support within each other that brought even more unity to the relationship?
Well, we're raw with emotion when going through grief, and we tend to be kind of, if you think about like a nerve ending that's raw, and so we really hurt and we get hurt easily. We're very sensitive and we can easily get offended and hurt, and misunderstand. And so the buffer is worn away. The grief makes us easily triggered. And what the love languages does is it's like it adds that buffer back. And as you begin to understand the love languages of your partner, your spouse, and your own, and you begin to have allowance for each other and just sort of permission to be who you are, and to understand the intentionality of the person's actions and words and what they're doing, you have the ability to just not quickly, re-injure and hurt each other. You begin to build up tougher skin, and it has an ability to just, it's like, I talk about the toolbox often. Like, you're going to need a lot of different things when you go through grief. You might need counseling. Prayer is powerful. We need prayer. We need lots of support people around us. We need people to talk to. We need people to process with. We need people to just be with us, just sit in the muck with us and just be silent sometimes. And we need people who are present and willing to go the extra mile with us when we're really in a dark place, and they need to go with us to help us get back out. And so the 5 love languages, in my perspective, is just another amazing, powerful tool in that toolbox. And it's one you use ongoing and consistently throughout the whole process and ongoing. And so, a common thing with men is they kind of put it on the shelf, put it in a box. It's there, they know it's there, they care, but they don't want to sit and perseverate on it. They don't want to emote about it. And women are very different. We carried this child. We have a very intricate relationship with the baby because of that. And we're wired to love them. We're not wired to get over them and forget about it. Our mother hearts are wired to stay connected. And so therein is a gap, a misunderstanding, a place of a caveat divide where we could begin to separate, because we're thinking we care more, we talk about them more, we are sharing about them more, we seem to do more actions and things that show our love for them more, and you seem to not be doing that. You don't come to support group anymore, you don't talk about them anymore, you're not bringing it up. And part of the problem is, and I discuss this in the book, is how is that man raised? Is he raised that emotion is not okay to show? Is he raised that he cannot cry? In our society, in our world, actually, get up and suck it up. You're a man, you're not a crybaby. I've heard so many parents scream at their young boys and tell them, quit being a stupid crybaby. And they mock them and they ridicule them and they put them down. And then you have the other side that's like coddles them so much they don't have an opportunity to be a man. They aren't given that. So there is a sweet spot in there of affirming emotions, but still saying, you are strong and you are brave and you are courageous and you can do this, but your tears are okay too. And so we can raise men to be strong warriors, but they're allowed to have emotions. They're allowed to acknowledge that and not try to disengage. It's like creating a split in the personality and the psyche of the person to say you can't feel emotion. So then when they go through this traumatic experience all of a sudden and go through loss, they're wired to just not be attached and not express emotion and to not deal with that. And so they tend to dive into something else. I'll put my energy into doing a really good hobby or being a really good provider, working out and get myself in shape. I'm going to be strong and healthy and be around a long time. I'm going to make a lot of money. I'm going to be successful. I'm going to show the world that I couldn't control what happened to my kid and I feel like I failed, but I'm going to control this. I'm going to control this part of my life. And often the wife, the partner is saying, I just want you to hold me and cry with me and talk to me and hear me out. And her gajillions of words is too much for him. He's like, oh my gosh, you just talk about this nonstop and I can't. It stresses him out because he's wired to want to fix it. He's wired to want to make it better. He can't bring the kid back. He can't fix it all and make it better. There is no easy fix in this situation. So he feels cut off at the knees. He feels disabled by this whole thing. And that is really hard to face that constantly. Like, I still can't fix it. I still can't make it better. I still can't take away her hurt. And so the heart is good. He wants to do something good, but he's not feeling equipped. And all she really needs is love me the way I want to be loved, and partner with me in that love. So for example, if a woman's love language is words of affirmation, meaning she likes to hear, you're amazing, you're beautiful, I'm proud of you, I'm so honored to be at your side and be your husband. He has all these beautiful, meaningful words, not just, lip service. We're talking the heart. It's words that you really mean and you're really thoughtful about, and you're thinking, I'm not doing this just to serve myself. I'm doing this to bless you and your heart. Mm-hmm. If that's her love language, then likely in the grief journey, if you translate that to the grief aspect, she's going to like if you write notes about your baby and give it to her. I thought about you today and I miss our little one today. And he leaves a note for her in the morning. If on the baby's birthday, he does something and it's with words, he gets, a plaque made or a picture made, and it has something to do with his love for their child together. She will feel like so united with him. Like, not only did you fill my love tank with my love language throughout this time, but then you loved our baby as a father in this parenting that we don't have a lot of options left, but you're doing what you can to love me through my love language and show me that. So for example, if the child was alive, she would want to see him saying, good job, buddy. I'm so proud of you. You're an amazing kid. Daddy just loves you so much. And that would make her go, oh, I'm so proud of my husband. I'm so attracted to him right now. And he's just so handsome to me because he's saying good things to their child. And that those words mean a lot to her. And so it translates, even if the baby has died, if your child has died, that love language still translates, because we appreciate seeing love the way we want to receive love also, as we observe it or we're given it. So those are all ways that I feel we can just bless the marriage, bless the union, help each other to just have a sense of well-being, because when I feel really loved, other things are easier to deal with. I have more confidence, I have more security, I feel more at peace, because at my home there's peace, and there's peace in my marriage. And so it translates to being able to also process the tough things we go through as grieving parents, because we're going to hit all these roadblocks and these challenges. Every time I would meet somebody who had a baby named Grace that was alive, every time I ran into somebody who had the child that would be her age, every time I was with my sister-in-laws, they had babies, and I had 7 friends who all had babies within just weeks and months of Grace. So I had this example in front of my eyes of all these children growing up and all their accomplishments, as they reached different things and graduated. And I had to, just as I went through that, I had to process anew something I didn't anticipate. You don't know until you're in that situation how it's going to affect you. And so grief is, I talk about this in the book, it's not linear. It's like cyclical, and we work through these things, and then we move and make a little bit of stride forward, and we work through these things, and it's messy and mucky, and it's unexpected. There's no way I could tell a parent, here's everything that's going to happen, that you're going to hit all these different difficulties. No one can prepare someone for how grief is going to come at them. But if you're strong and secure in your faith, if you're strong and secure in your relationships, if you have just a sense about you that it's going to be okay, you're going to honor your child, you're going to be able to give them a legacy. Like, these things matter. Like, the baby's life isn't just, that's it. I find parents who process well and who get through grief well is because they're very intentional about doing something to honor the life of their child. They have something that is positive in the future. It gives them hope. You have to have something to look forward to. Not only do I know where Grace is and I get to be with her again, and our baby Promise, because we miscarried also, but I feel like in the day-to-day, what I do, I'm still a good mom to Grace and Promise. I still get the opportunity to conduct my life in a way that would honor them. And so I say to people, honor their memory, honor the blessing of their life, but they still are in eternity, and they're still part of you, and you did create them. You got to co-create with God. It's amazing. That itself is a miracle. And there is a deposit in heaven for you for that, but do something well with your life now that they would be proud of if they were your child and be alive here, right? Because they're still proud of you on the other side of the veil. And, it says we're surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses. And so I just have goosebumps right now. I know the Holy Spirit's on that, but many parents, they just long to just connect one more time with their kid, to see them, to know that they're okay, to know that they're not just a vapor and they vanished and that's it. And of course, if you don't have a Christian faith and you don't have the hope and promise of eternity with Christ, then you don't have that secure understanding. But we who have faith know that we do have eternity and with our loved ones. And so that great cloud of witnesses, I imagine often the Lord peeling back the veil for the witnesses to cheer us on and to see. And so I always say to the parents, let them see the good thing in you. Let them see that which honors the Lord and honors them.
When you got the marriage on firm ground, that you created an environment for grief to be handled in an edifying way. Mm-hmm. That you weren't measuring his level of grief and being disappointed because you understood how he processed grief. So when the communication channels became open and it was no longer somebody falling short of one another's expectations of how they should be reacting, how they should be responding, right, what they should be saying or doing, and giving them the latitude to be themselves and to understand what that means. When they do this, that's what that means. That's them in their language doing this in my language.
Right.
When you can do that, and that's the beauty of the love languages, is that they are fairly universal. That there's very few situations that understanding and processing the communications, interpersonal communications with somebody you love, through whatever the challenges are, whether or not they're through addiction, whether or not they're through death, whether or not they're through suicide, whether or not through any number. And this one for me is the hardest. I think for many there's many other challenges, but for me, as I look upon this one tugs at my heartstrings more than all the rest.
It's very hard. It's raw. It's so, people don't understand. They often would say to me, well, it's 3 months and how come you're not over it? Oh my gosh, like, which of your kids would you get over in 3 months after they died? Like, wouldn't you care or remember them or be sad when Christmas comes, their birthday comes, important celebration? I mean, we are expected as bereaved parents to truly just shut up about it, get over it, move on, and not discuss it. This is prevalent all across many cultures. I have found this to be true. The 5 love languages is written in over 50 languages. There's a reason it works so well. It does translate to other cultures and to other languages. It translates beautifully. And I know this book will probably be written in many different languages too. And I hope so, because I do believe it will translate well. The book talks about the importance of ongoing acknowledgement. We don't just get over them and forget. Nobody does. Even people who have an abortion don't get over it and forget. They can try to pretend that they do. Excuse me. They can, say it didn't matter. They can try to just call it a blob of tissue, what have you. But I give an example in the book of a mom who had an abortion when she was younger and was told it was no big deal. And then when she was delivering her baby, it all came up, all the emotions, and she was just weeping and mourning what she had done. And so, baby making is serious, and the consummate act it's serious, and we can't take it lightly. All the disregard of babies and children is alarming to me. I know we have an enemy who's out to kill, steal, and destroy, so that makes sense. I understand what his plan is, but I want to say loud and clear, these babies all matter. and anyone who's grieving, I just want to say to you, I'm there with you in heart and spirit. Like, we understand this is a long journey. This isn't short. We don't want to trivialize any of it. It's important that you process how you need to, as long as you're healthy and not hurting yourself or others. But take the time you need and do all that you need and gather all the resources you need. And this should be just one of them. You should have many others. And there's so many good places to get help online and in person. And I just want to bless the people who are going through grief and trauma. There's quite a journey, and they need a lot of love and support to get through it strong.
Amen. Amen. We've been talking with Candy McVicker, who, along with Dr. Gary Chapman, authored Holding On to Love After You've Lost a Baby, the 5 Love Languages for Grieving Parents. First of all, may your children's names be for a blessing for you, your family, and for all the world, to know that they mattered and they still matter. And that we who have compassion grieve with you even today, years later, for the grief will never end until you're reunited with the one you love. So we understand that, and we extend that prayer for you and that covering for your family, that you would celebrate their lives and to know that there are people whose hearts are being touched even now by this profound story. Candy McVicker, thank you. Thank you for being transparent. Thank you for wanting to help others, to help them navigate what was a challenge and still is for you. It will not go away. You will not get over it. And God doesn't expect you to get over it no more than God expected to get over the sacrifice of His Son. And
Amen.
Even today, 2,000 years later, we remember the death of Jesus. So if we can remember the death of Jesus for 2,000 years, in the short span of life that we have, we can give memory to these little babies. Candy McVicker, thank you. God bless you and all the works of your hand.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.